Here's the podcast script. New York's primary night just delivered a stunning message: insurgency is beating incumbency, and a new power broker has arrived in Democratic politics. Mayor Zoran Mamdani made a big bet on Tuesday, and he won decisively. All three of the congressional candidates he personally backed came out on top, and in doing so, he shattered local political conventions and cemented his place as an undeniable force in New York's Democratic landscape, just 1 year after his own primary victory stunned the establishment. Let's walk through what happened. Mamdani's hand-picked candidate in a seat spanning Brooklyn and Queens, a one-term state assemblywoman named Claire Valdez, trounced her opponent, who had the backing of the outgoing Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez. Then, his endorsed contender in a district straddling Upper Manhattan and the Bronx, an activist and doctoral student named Daria Eliza Avila Chevalier, narrowly edged out sitting Representative Adriano Espaillat. And his pick in a seat covering parts of Brooklyn and Manhattan, former City Comptroller Brad Lander, routed Representative Dan Goldman in a race that was called just minutes after polls closed. Along the way, Mamdani defeated candidates backed by Governor Kathy Hochul and Representative Hakeem Jeffries, the top Democrat in Congress, in what was a relatively low-turnout primary. Speaking to cheering crowds at his election night party, Mamdani framed the wins in stark terms: "The old politics that got us into this crisis is not the politics that's going to get us out of this crisis." Now, the wins weren't just about Mamdani's reach, they said something about where Democratic voters are right now. In backing Valdez and Avila Chevalier, both Democratic socialists, he placed his faith in relatively untested contenders going up against much better-known politicians. And voters went along with it. Avila Chevalier won even after scrutiny of past social media posts in which she criticized Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, interracial relationships, and the American flag. It was not a good night for everyone, though. Jack Schlossberg, grandson of President John F. Kennedy, entered the crowded race to succeed retiring Representative Jerry Nadler in the 12th Congressional District with his family's political legacy and support from Democratic heavyweights behind him. But a dysfunctional campaign style and his irreverent social media habits severely hampered his bid. He finished a distant third. The seat ultimately went to Micah Lasher, a state assemblyman and longtime Nadler protege who leaned into his decades of experience in Democratic politics. Schlossberg ended his campaign by invoking his grandfather, asking supporters to think about what they can do to help their city. The issue of Israel also loomed large throughout the night. AIPAC largely laid low in this cycle, but that didn't stop candidates from making it central to their campaigns. Lander hammered Goldman over his ties to pro-Israel donors. Avila Chevalier called out Espaillat for receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars in AIPAC donations over his decade in Congress. The word genocide became a litmus test. Candidates who would not use it to describe the war in Gaza paid a political price. And the money involved in all of this? Staggering. This may have been the most expensive congressional cycle in New York history, with more than $50 million poured into super PACs. The race to replace Nadler alone saw more than $40 million spent. Former Mayor Michael Bloomberg backed Lasher, while artificial intelligence companies poured money in on both sides of that contest. The results also set up what could be a significant fault line within the Democratic Party going forward. By doubling the number of Democratic socialists in the House from 2 to 4, Mamdani and his allies are positioned to push the caucus further left. Neither Valdez nor Avila Chevalier has committed to backing Jeffries in his bid for House Speaker if Democrats win back the majority in November. Jeffries, for his part, suggested Democrats should focus less on safely blue seats and more on competitive districts like New York's Long Island suburbs, where flipping a seat held by Republican Mike Lawler is seen as key to winning back the House majority. The bottom line from Tuesday night is this: in New York, at least, voters are hungry for change, and Zoran Mamdani just proved he knows how to feed that hunger. That's today's story. I'm glad you were along for it.